Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne, with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne, with an E. Just a special shout out if this is your first ever podcast. Thank you for tuning in and for listening. It is a pleasure to have you. Also, if you want to start your own podcast, the usual reminder that using Buzzsprout as your podcast host would be the best decision. And what you can do is you can click in the link in the show notes, and that will lead you directly to the Buzzsprout site. And also you will help support this show. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest is Sandra Phoma. She's from Mafikeng in South Africa, and she's studying in Pretoria. In this episode, we learned that growing up, Sandra had many interests, ranging from arts, sports, and academic activities. After taking a gap year, she decided to focus on science. She tells us that she ventured into the field of ocean science with the skills that she learned from her honors and master's degree in microbiology. Currently, Sandra is a PhD candidate in ocean microbiology. Her work involves understanding the diversity, biogeography, and the functionality of the ocean microbiome. The sampling area involves waters south of Africa, South Indian Ocean, and the Southern Ocean. She tells us about this research and the importance of this work. During the PhD, Sandra also had the opportunity to mentor, teach, and help other young scientists, which she enjoyed. With that, she was recognized by the European Union, and currently she is the South African ambassador for the All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassador Program that helps connect local communities back to the ocean. You know, in this journey, it can be a very lonely one, especially as a first-generation postgraduate student. She tells us about some of the support that she's received, in particular from Twitter. And also, Sandra tells us in this episode how if she had her own lab, how she would run it as a supervisor. And guess what? It involves Beyonce. Now, if you want to hear about all of this and so much more, tune into the show. Hi, Sandra. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Anne.
I'm so excited to chat with you and for everybody just to get to know more about you and the root of the science, of your science, rather.
Yes, I'm excited about this journey as well.
Right.
I've been looking, I'm a fan of the podcast. So
yeah.
I was on the sideline being like, pick me. So I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for being a fan. So let's get to know you, because now you are in it, on the other side. Please tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're based, and what you currently are doing.
Okay, so my age is 30 years old, but with the pandemic, I feel like I'm old another year, like everybody else. So I'm a scientist. I fall under the umbrella of ocean scientists. So I'm actually an ocean microbial ecologist, and I work in understanding the relationship of microbial life and the ocean as the environment I'm studying. I'm a PhD candidate doing this work, but I also have other passions, in terms of climate justice.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So before we get into everything that you do, I just want, I use this opportunity for us just to get to know you away from the science. So personally, I call you my Netflix influencer. Can Netflix give you an influencer job? Because
right. Secure the bag.
Secure the bag. Because I know you watch some very interesting shows and you comment about them on your Twitter. What are some of the favorite things that you're currently watching now and why?
Okay, so I had made a list because I always come prepared. So I think because I have different tastes, I've been influenced by television in different ways. At one point in my life, I wanted to be a playwright, wanted to be a director, work on on productions. So my dad had exposed me to a lot of documentaries growing up. So I'm always the girl who knows what's the latest documentary. So the thing about Netflix is that they have a wide range of documentaries. I think I've watched majority of them. I hope my PhD supervisor is not listening, but but I guess for what I had put down is that if you are really trying to understand the racial justice climate and what is happening in America, there are 3 shows that you can watch. So the first 2 are by Ava DuVernay, so it's 13th, and the other one is When They See Us. So, and there's another show called The Innocence Files, where it's the good side, I guess, where Black men and other people get exonerated from crimes that they were accused of. So I'm also fascinated by drugs. So I know that The Business of Drugs is one of the shows that actually is trending right now. But there are others that I really love. The Pharmacist is a must watch. If you want to understand how actually pharmaceutical companies can infiltrate your doctor to tell you to prescribe a particular pill, and that pill can get you addicted. Wow. So The Pharmacist for me is one of those shows that you have to watch. So, and then there's another show by How to Fix a Drug Scandal. So this one, everyone must watch this one because it looks at how people who work in drug testing for the police service. So if you, for instance, in South Africa, you were testing for blood, but then if they recover drugs from a drug mule or a drug addict, they take them to a lab to test if they're real. So we have a story of 2 scientists who actually were taking those drugs. But I would say for Women's Month, because we're celebrating women, I recommend Becoming by Michelle Obama and Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. Special, but those are the shows that have inspired me. They've inspired me. And I think as a scientist, we all are we are creative beings because we are creating, concept out of, out of literature that exists. So,
like I said, you are a Netflix influencer because I was sitting there on The Pharmacist. Now I'm like, I have to watch that.
You have to watch it. You have to watch it. It's one of those things that blew my mind.
Well, let's take it back to now you. As much as we know about you and your shows, you spoke briefly about your dad and how you initially wanted to be a playwright and how your dad exposed you to all of that. So clearly that didn't happen because you are in STEM. So I want you to tell us, how did you land up here? What were some of the influences that got you into this field?
Okay, so I'm one of those kids, a person could be like jack of all trades, a master of none. So I tried everything. So my parents were had a parenting, parenting method to allow us to do anything that we wanted. So if I woke up today and be like, I want to try tennis, my dad will make sure that, okay, let's find somebody, who can teach this child how to play tennis.
Wow.
So my parents were very supportive. So I never got, the pressure to choose a career because my parents just allowed us to do whatever we wanted. And they were just like, we just make sure that we have instilled good values, but what you do with your life is in your hands. So because of that, and I'm a very indecisive person, I tried everything. I tried photography, I played the cello, sang in a choir, did a bit of drama, did a bit of dance sport.
Oh, weird. Yeah.
And yes, but it's just that my academics were as good because that's the benefit, I guess, of, good parenting. My parents were like, you will not have extramurals if your marks are not good. So we were challenged to have our marks to be good, and then you will be rewarded with, ballet, or you can go to an art museum. So growing up, I always thought that I was going to be in the arts because I was fascinated. I loved Beyonce from the beginning. I was always fascinated by how you can write music and it can touch people. So I really loved the storytelling part of it, and it was moving for me. And I was like, I want to be a storyteller. So in school, my teachers were always telling me that do medicine, your marks are good, look at chemical engineering. And I remember at grade 12, we did personality tests and aptitude tests to see which career best suited you. So I was grouped in the artists. So I had a tie. I had a tie for art.
Okay.
And art and sciences. And I was like, okay, we'll see who wins at the end. So I finished my matric, but I did my HIGSEs, which is like a Cambridge system. So after I did my HIGSEs, my parents had a meeting with me and said, you know what, Sandra, we can't afford to send you to varsity. So I think because of that, I just got a light bulb that, okay, so my parents can't afford to take me to varsity. That means the career I have to go into, it has to be one that is dependable, So I just had a time to reflect during that, a gap year, to reflect on the careers that I can make out of myself. And I looked also at success stories, and there are a lot of artists who didn't go to school for art, but they were doing amazing work. So I was just like, I could do this as a passion project and continue to do my undergrad. So the next year, family came together and I was able to get an edu loan to do my undergrad. So actually there were 3 courses that were available. And it was information systems, which were all BScs, geography and physics, and biology and chemistry. And I was just like, wait, I did biology and chemistry for my high school. So let me just see how this one goes. And a lot of people were like, yeah, you can do this to get into medicine. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll see how it goes. But I remember I registered the day that they had chemistry practicals. So I was late. So I was one of those people who were in late, where I think people were, 3 days ahead. So I had to literally buy a lab coat, go to chemistry, and they were doing titrations. And I was just like, whoa, this is a different life. So I fell in love with science at titration. I always say that I fell in love with, and I was out, and I hated titrations. I did, to be honest. But I was just like, I love the problem solving part of it. And I thought it was quite creative because you had to troubleshoot. And I love troubleshooting. When you're an artist writing music, when you can't get to a perfect note, you work around on how your breathing exercises can get you there. So I just saw it in, this is a journey and I can succeed at it. And yeah, I graduated with my PhD and I was like, honest, let's do this. Masters, let's do this. So yeah, thank God for titration.
Thank God for titrations indeed. So now you said the reason you initially wanted to become a doctor, obviously, but then that changed. So how do you then hear about or know about oceanography or ocean science as a whole? Because I'm thinking there are a lot of people who aren't even aware that is even an option.
I didn't know it was an option. Yeah, I didn't know it was an option because I'm an inland girl. So I'm from Mafikeng and I did my undergrad at the Northwest University. There's no ocean here. And so I was just like, it's impossible for you to get into a career. But the thing about having a postgraduate degree, you have the skill to pretty much go anywhere you want. I always tell students that if you do not like cancer research, the same techniques that you are using, you can go into environmental research, So that's the thing about science is that I did my honors in microbiology and got my master's in microbiology. But because I'm doing ocean microbiology as an ocean scientist, I can just use the DNA techniques, the bioinformatics skills that I have and apply them to an environmental platform, you know. So it wasn't hard for me to transition. It's just that I was in a lab that worked in environments. So at UP, our lab is the Center for Microbial Ecology and Genomics. So my lab works they work at in deserts, so cold deserts and hot deserts. So the Namib Desert and Antarctic Desert, they're looking at the soils. So the project for looking at oceans just came up because of the SA Gallus 2 vessel. So it was launched in 2013. So this ship it's amazing. It's an amazing ship. So I was able to go into the ship. I think I've been on the ship 4 times. It's a huge ship that has a lab inside. It's one of the most, it's one of the most, if you have time, Google SA Gallus 2 vessel, and you can see that it's a research vessel that is equipped with oceanographic equipment. So these equipments can collect water. So because I'm working on water, it was easier for me to just filter the water, send the filters for DNA extraction. So it's something that I had done previously in my degrees, looking at environmental samples. So the transition wasn't that hard. It was just a matter of luck that I was there at the right time, at the right place, and I could take up the opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic that you're able to do that and you got exposed to this area of studies. And I like how you said that as much as you can say you're doing your honors in this particular field of science, but there's so many people who are able to cross paths. And I think that's a beautiful thing about science, that you can... Yes. The basics are the same. I mean, we all did math, physics, chemistry, biology, or one of the 4, but the main 4 components are all the same. And as much as it doesn't make sense in first year, but you see how later on in life that crossing in between why you needed those basic fundamentals. And speaking of your PhD, you are a PhD student, and your work involves understanding the diversity, biogeography, and the functionality of oceans microbes. So the sampling area involves South Africa, which is the South Indian Ocean, and the Southern Ocean. So can you please tell us more about your research and why it is so important?
Okay, so microorganisms in the ocean, very much like microorganisms in plants and the soil, are pivotal for the ecosystem. In the ocean, they are the base of biogeochemical cycles, hence pivotal for any type of ecosystem functioning that happens in the ocean. So they are the base of the food web. So if we know with the food web, I guess we did geography, all of us. We know that, most of us. So we know that with the food chain, every member is important as the next member. So with bacteria and archaea, viruses, as well as fungi and other small eukaryotes, they play different roles. So for instance, with bacteria, there are different types of bacteria with different lifestyles. So if a bacteria can photosynthesize, we call that a cyanobacteria. So they can perform photosynthesis on the ocean. So understanding how they are distributed in the ocean, as well as other bacteria and viruses, they're just working in a consortium. So they can tell us a story about what's happening in the ocean because they are the smallest organisms and the most sensitive to changes in the ocean. So understanding how they are diverse, so who's who and who's more abundant in the ocean when we are going from Cape Town all the way to the Southern Ocean, who's doing in charge of carbon cycling, who's in charge of sulfur cycling, who's in charge of other different enzyme metabolism. So understanding pretty much the baseline of all the chemical reactions that are happening that are modified and modulated by bacteria and other microorganisms. It's important for us to know that, because the South Indian Ocean and the Southern Ocean south of Africa is the least studied area of the ocean. And what is important is that our oceans are important for taking in atmospheric CO2. They're important for maintaining, how the world as we know it. For instance, every second breath that we take comes from photosynthesis from the ocean. So knowing that bacteria are also involved in that photosynthesis will let us know that if we have any type of change or alterations to the ocean due to climate change, how can we track that? And the best thing to track it, you can't track it with bigger mammals because you can't sample an entire whale. So it's better for us to get a sample. Sometimes 5 milliliters of water can tell you what is happening. So if you have for instance, a peak in bacteria that produces toxins in the water, you will know that there has been a shift in metabolism. So all this information is very much informative in how we tackle climate change, how we tackle ocean protection. And also there's considerable alert for us to use bacteria as well as other microbes in our climate models. So currently our climate models are more using atmospheric and more oceanographic standards instead of using biological life. So understanding how we can use both information could be a change maker in how we can approach policies and how we can actually track what's happening in the ocean. So my work is pretty much the first project to come out of this funded project. So my work was more survey related, understanding who's there, who's doing what, and what is it telling us about the status of the climate. And other students are working on more smaller elements where they're looking directly into the different, maybe the iron cycle, the sulfur cycle. So my role as a PhD student was not just to do my PhD. It's been a lot of mentorship. I also was able to be a mini PI, I always say. So every time when we go sampling, I was the one who knew how to, carry out sampling. So I pretty much passed the baton. And this was a huge opportunity for me because I'm a natural born leader. As a firstborn girl, I always, say that I'm a deputy mom, even to my older brother. So I always felt like, yeah, this is my role. This is where I belong, because I really love leading people and collaborating with people. So that, I guess, played to my positives with this PhD.
Love everything that you're saying, and it's very interesting, your research, that from the ocean we can learn so much. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, that we just think that the ocean is just there. But with everything that you've said, you've told us that there's that interconnectedness, and you sound very passionate, and I could see how you became the junior PI.
Yes. And through this work, I was also recognized by the European Union. So I'm currently the South African ambassador. That for me, I was like, what do you mean? So I'm one of the 23 young leaders that were selected to be ocean stewards. So we are the All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassador Program. So what we do is that we develop campaigns to connect, our communities back to the ocean, because my mentality is that before colonialism, before apartheid, our cultures were very much connected to the ocean. We use ocean water for a lot of rituals, particularly in my family. We have to go to the ocean. You have to go once in your life just to dip in your body in there so that you can reconnect with your ancestors, because our ancestors were very much close to the coast and we were moved inland because of apartheid. So in this way, that it blows my mind, because I left art to become a scientist. And now I am using indigenous stories to connect people back to the ocean. So I always be like, God knows where he places you sometimes. Maybe if you don't belong, like you don't belong in any type of religious group, but you can really realize that there is a power that is in control, the universe or whatever you call it, that has placed you in that particular position for you to gain your accolades and your gifts. And because I was not prepared, I feel, at the beginning of my journey, so now I'm more prepared, and I have the networks to reach the community that I feel I can reach at this age with these degrees. Because also, unfortunately, the way we treat people, sometimes we treat them by what they have achieved. So if I had went from high school and tried to connect people with the ocean without a degree, for instance, I don't think I would have had as much impact and had the ears of the world leaders as we do right now. And yesterday we got a message that we were accepted to present our work at the Paris Peace Forum, which is based in Paris. It's a UN-driven. I was like, who am I?
What?
Okay. Right? I'm the girl.
You are the girl.
Yeah, and I was just like so mind blown because I've been at home since lockdown, and I was like, I was playing hopscotch, just not so long ago. I was just a girl from a city that is not known for science, and here I am. I remember being at the EU and presenting my work and thinking, wow, look at God, So that's pretty much how I always advocate for scientists to have a passion project in some form of justice work. So for me, it's more of a climate justice work, because I feel that with our knowledge, people trust scientists. It might not look like that during the coronavirus, but scientists have always been speaking. We should believe the scientists. So it's very important that if you're a scientist and you can have a voice, use your voice, because it's there for a reason, and be able to speak about the issues that you are experiencing and, change the lives of your communities. That's just my plea. I would like to leave my community better than I found it.
That's fantastic, Sandra.
I'm getting emotional.
You're doing an amazing job, and I love it. And I love that you're taking up all of these spaces. And like you said, whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever higher power that you're doing, these amazing things will happen for you. Even now, as you're thinking, like, I'm at home, I'm not doing much, Corona. Sure. But, and also congratulations. You had your second author paper as well.
Yes, during Corona.
Yeah, during Corona. So I think what you're saying is spot on. Like, these things will continue to work even if you are in the right place, and, whoever you believe in, whatever you believe in, those things will happen for you. And as long as you are passionate and you are doing the work and the results are coming, and we love to see it. We love to see you getting all of these accolades, and for you for advocating for this work, because you do it not only, on Twitter, and that's where people are seeing you, and continue to do it. I really love to see it.
Thank you so much. And the support has been overwhelming as well, I mean, sometimes you just think it's just Twitter, but it's not. I formed great networks. So I always advocate also scientists to dip into social media. I know, it's quite intimidating at start, but you can find your community. I found you, I found Collie, I found so many other women who are doing amazing things, and it's super inspiring sometimes, because science is very lonely. And I have told you, like, I have, struggled with mental health, challenges, because I feel like science is very lonely. It's very hard to get support, particularly when you're a first gen scientist in your family. There's nobody for you to call to be like, yo, I'm having this problem with my supervisor. How can I? There's no soundboard. You're talking to other students, and, sometimes the advice can't be reliable. So it's very lonely, and I struggled particularly with that part of science. But you can find your community online. Don't be afraid of the trolls. Just block. you know?
Yeah, just block. I love how you mentioned you brought up that you had some troubles. Like, people might see that, oh my word, Sandra is achieving things and she's amazing. She's going to the EU. And from afar, it looks like you have no issues. You have no problems. But I know that there's the mental health thing, the lonely thing, and that sense of like, maybe I don't belong here. You know, being Black, being female, being African in these spaces is really, really hard. So I wanted to ask you, how did you deal with it? How did you overcome those moments? Because you'd had to overcome them for you to be where you are. I mean, it's not a once-off thing. It's something that you have to continuously keep on working on it. So how did you do it?
Honestly, I didn't take it well. You know, I always attribute that because I'm an overachiever and I've always been an overachiever. So I have never failed in anything except probably, you know, maths. The first, you know, exam that I had in varsity. I think all of us, we were traumatized by calculus in varsity. So that didn't count. It wasn't failure. It wasn't failure for me because everybody fails, okay? So it was hard for me to deal with a failure. PhD, it's different. It's a different playground. Like masters, you have the support. The reason there's a masters is for you to master a skill. So if you master a skill, it's enough for you to pass your masters. But for a PhD, it's all about innovation and proving pretty much your worth, that you're actually worth people's time. Your project is worth the money. Like, you know, you can't make a mistake. I felt like I couldn't make a mistake. So I didn't handle it properly. I didn't talk about my struggles, first of all, which I advocate people to talk about their struggles. And because I just saw that people were just existing in this life and nobody was speaking, I just thought that, oh, maybe that is normal. Okay. So it wasn't until I had a chat with my mom. I was like, you know, I'm feeling like I'm not built for this because it's just super lonely. I just feel like I'm alone at this journey. And, you know, my supervisor have never said your performance is horrible, but it's just like the treatment when you go to conferences, when you go sampling, you're always now being judged that you are Black. Like, it's almost like you always have to prove your worth. And it's something that I've never been exposed to because I was in a predominantly Black university at the beginning of my journey. So there was not a lot of like racism issues. So for me, racism was weird to deal with because I'm from a small town, majority Black people. So when I moved to Pretoria, I was like, wait a minute. You want to tell me that there are other hoops that I have to jump through for me to, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, like now people are like saying, oh, you got your honors degree at so-and-so university. It's not that good enough. So I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I felt like maybe somebody's going to be like, yeah, you didn't do this. You have to go back to your undergrad, you know? I always felt like somebody was going to come out of the shadows and be like, you don't deserve to be here. We found so-and-so and they say you can't do this. So it's just a lot of challenges that I number one, therapy helps. So going through therapy and understanding that actually my journey is not unique. I'm not alone at this. A lot of people do feel that they are sometimes frauds at what they're doing. And also the support. I feel like also academia cannot support students so well because the people who are in academia have never been supported. They don't know how it looks like to be in a supportive space. So sometimes we expect a lot of our supervisors to treat us a little bit more with empathy, but that has never been shown to them. So they can't be people that they don't know. So I've always now learn to reel it in and be like, okay, maybe he you know, maybe so-and-so is acting this way because they did not experience affirming. So I'm going to affirm myself in this moment. I'm smart. I deserve to be here. And just remind yourself why you are there and why you love what you're doing. So try to pep yourself up and tell your parents about your journey. Your parents will support you even though they don't understand what you're doing. But I'll tell them that, you know, I'm not having a good day because sometimes we keep quiet, you know, we keep quiet a lot. And then we blow out and we have issues. I think we should communicate more. But what I loved about Twitter as well, you remember when it was going, Black and Ivory and shut down STEM. I was like, whoa. There were actually issues like microaggressions that I've gotten, like people refusing to pronounce my name properly. The fact that I'm known by Sandra is because people were butchering Britumelo. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go by Sandra because it will, I always assimilated myself so that people will have a better experience with me. So that I was like, why do I have to change myself? So it's like little things like that I'm like, I also assimilated to the culture because I was like, okay, let me not just use Britumelo. Let me just go by Sandra. So nobody actually knows that that's why I go by Sandra. So it was just like now looking back, I'm like, whoa, why did I do that? And I think my self-esteem was definitely down for me to believe that people will actually care to pronounce my name properly. So yeah.
You spoke about something very important about how sometimes with supervisors, I think the people who are blessed, I don't even want to say you're lucky, the people who are blessed enough to have a great student-supervisor relationship should thank that over, because I know so many people struggle with that. Yeah. And you said something important about how maybe for them, they were not supported. So how can you be a supportive supervisor if you were not supported? So maybe there's something wrong with the system and not necessarily the person. So I wanted to pose to you quickly. I just wanted to pose to you quickly before we wrap it up. If you had your own lab, how would you, hypothetically, how would you run it in terms of everything that you've learned, everything that you've seen, and everything that you've gone through? What would your lab look like?
Ooh, first of all, Beyonce will be playing in the background because I feel like music brings a lot of people. I just feel like in my lab, we would have streamed Black is King, and had a conversation about that. I think what is important about science is that we focus on the science and not the people. We focus too much on the who's producing what, who's publishing what, who published where, and the impact factor. We are just bombarded with so many milestones that we have to reach, but we forget the person. Because, for instance, with my brother passing away, I didn't get a message from my lab. And I'm just like, the whole world is sending me condolences. Like, why can't you send me a condolence? So it's just little things like that where we are seen as quotas, we are seen as a number. So Sandra must produce how many numbers. So I feel like my lab will be different in that way. I would see people as who they are, and I would take an effort to know people's personalities. So if I know that Anne is not a morning person, I'm not going to make a meeting at 6 a.m. at 8 a.m. I'm going to wait until 12 p.m. because that's where she's most productive. So know the people that you're working with. It doesn't take so long, for you to know who you're working with. And particularly if you're taking your students for 3 years plus, like a PhD, it will make a better relationship for you to make an initiative to know who they are. And the other one is to help people find their voice in the lab. So, for instance, in my lab, they knew that I was very good at planning and organizing and logistics. So all those duties will fall into me because I'm good at that. I'm not good at troubleshooting and, fixing an autoclave. So find the students that are good at whatever and, affirm them in the skills that they have. So that's what I loved about my lab, that we have a rotating skills chart. So after you finish with your PhD, you pretty much know how to run a lab, which is something that I feel like a lot of people could benefit from. Oh. So that's what I love from my lab that I would take into my new lab. And then the other one, I would say that people should be conscientized about racial justice, diversity and inclusion work at the beginning of your PhD. So the first day, we shouldn't be saying, here is where the pipettes stay. We should be like, look, our lab is transparent. If you feel we are a safe space, you are allowed to explore, different injustices in the lab, and we can have conversations about that. I feel like a lot of scientists don't want to be political. They don't want to talk about issues because they just feel like they're there just for the work. So it's very important because our work is very political. The fact that HIV research gets funded more than ocean science is political because people are being affected by the virus, you know? So for us to avoid politics, for me, it's kind of lazy, and we have to move into an environment where we can add to the society because we are using tax monies. People should know about our science. We should communicate our science to TV, radios, and podcasts like yourself so that people could know what we're doing, because that's the work that is needed. We need to inspire the next generation to be just as good change makers or even better than us. So that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the message, and in particular about inspiring the next generation, because that's exactly what you are. I know I had a conversation with my supervisor. I am blessed to have a very amazing supervisor. So he always says that, yeah, thank you. Shout out to my supervisor.
Yes.
But he always says that, and I'm not trying to make you another me. He's like, I know you have your own strengths. I know what you're good at. I know, like what you said about learning somebody, and it's trying. I think the process is mentoring you to be a better Anne or a better Sandra for the world to fully enjoy your purpose. And I think your lab, I truly hope that you become a real PI, because it sounds like a bore, especially that Beyonce part. And
exactly. I will have all the students.
Yeah, pity for those who don't like Beyonce. I think you should have that in your application, prerequisite Beyonce
songs. Yeah, you have to name 3 Beyonce songs to be part of the lab.
Wow. Talk about what pop profiling or something like music profiling. But anyway, Sandra, let's just as we end off, please just tell me, with everything that you've gone through, where you are right now, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to start this journey or is in the middle of their journey as well, be it in STEM or in your field in particular? What would you say to them?
Okay, so I would speak to the person who feel like they're not in the right place, that, sometimes you need to persevere a little bit. Be kind to yourself and work through it. Because at the end of that journey, there will be a milestone, regardless of whether it was a mistake or not. You would know that I don't like this, so you would avoid that. So I just would advise people not to be so hard on themselves. Know what you're capable of and stand for your truth. Don't keep quiet when there's an injustice happening to you, because we need you. We don't want to lose you to mental health issues. We need you. So know that somebody needs you. We love you. We value what you bring into the world. And sometimes just follow your heart. That's all I could say. In any type of science that you are passionate about, find somebody that is currently doing it and have a conversation with them. I always tell young people that you create your own legacy. And as much as it's a huge responsibility, but nobody is responsible for your life but yourself. So try to take, wise decisions, but also be kind to yourself.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that message. And thank you for sharing your story. It was so lovely having you. I enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too. I enjoyed it. And I'm not looking forward to hearing my voice, but, I saw your theme about scientists listening to the song. I don't like the sound of my voice, but I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that more collaborations come out of it. And, I wish all the best for you, for your platform and everything that's happening, with your PhD coming up. I wish you all the best, and I just hope that, all God's mercies are on you and you become as successful as you want to be.
Oh, thank you so much. That was beautiful. I wish the same for you and for everybody else who's listening. Thank you for listening and for tuning in. We really appreciate you listening to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.